just in general, Americans, especially the Americans who voted for Donald Trump, who represent the majority of Republicans, are sick and tired of having these discussions about foreign countries, whether it's Israel or anyone else. But Israel right now has a outsized influence on our foreign policy in the Middle East, which has catapulted us into this current conflict with Iran, which helped drive us into the tragic Iraq war. So look, I think Americans want our government to focus on our problems here in America. Drive around any American city, you're going to see poverty, despair. Those are the issues that people want to focus on. They don't want to focus on, who's running the Israeli cabinet or what the foreign policy preferences are of the Israeli government to drive us into the next series of conflicts. So I think that's why you're seeing so many people who came out and voted for President Trump when he campaigned on putting American interests first. I don't think we need to get rid of any kind of, relationship that we have with Israel. I don't think this is an Israeli versus Palestinian issue. I think what happens between the Israelis and the Palestinians is, quite frankly, their business. I think most Americans would agree. I think we just need to have normal relations with Israel like we would with any other country. But right now, our relationship with Israel is so off balanced that you are seeing a lot of people putting this issue front and center because the war in Iran and the wars in the Middle East for the last 2 decades plus have consumed so much blood, so much treasure, and just so much attention from our leaders that many people, especially on the Republican side, are saying this is out of whack. We need our leaders to prioritize us. And I think that's what you're going to see in the next election cycle, not just the midterms, but especially as we have an open primary in 2028 for the presidency.
Of course, Israel has nothing to do with the United States, and the United States has nothing to do with Israel.
Behest of Netanyahu, because we heard it come out of Marco Rubio's mouth. He said the reason American forces preemptively struck in Iran.
Then he withdrew that.
I tend to believe what the Secretary of State in America says publicly when he's first asked, rather than when he's told what he should be saying.
I do too, but it's a more nuanced story.
But Alan,
the Prime Minister of Israel doesn't tell Israel what to do.
Hang on. Yeah. But Marco Rubio is not a stupid man. He's probably the most competent person in that entire cabinet.
He's brilliant. What he was saying. I think he's terrific.
He made it. Yeah. Right. So we're all agreed he's brilliant. So a brilliant man does not say the opposite of what he actually believes. And he said to us clearly on camera that America preemptively struck in Iran because Israel had told them that they were going to attack Iran, and they knew that if that happened, Iran would attack American interests. So they got in first.
That's a question of timing. That's a question of timing.
Yeah, but it's also a question of who is pulling the strings. I agree with you. The timing was determined.
It's
a question of who's.
Well,
it's also about who's pulling the strings.
That's the oldest anti-Semitic trope in history, that Israel's pulling, that the Jews are pulling the strings. Nobody tells Trump what to do. Trump decides what to do.
So basically, Piers Morgan is called anti-Semite by the Zionist Alan Dershowitz. Like, come on, he is the most Zionist. He's the most pro-Israeli out there. And he's still getting called Zionist, anti-Semite by the Zionists. Unbelievable. Like, you are anti-Semite.
What Israel said and what the United States together said is we have intelligence that all these people are meeting in the same place, so this is the time to do it. But the United States and Donald Trump did not start a war based on Israel's interest. They started a war based on American interests. Jews comprise 2% of the American population, half of whom don't even support Israel. Muslims and Arabs are 1.3%. Trump complains, and to me he complains. Why don't Jews vote for me? I'm so good. Why don't they vote for me? Trump doesn't go to war in order to satisfy Israel's legitimate interests rather than the legitimate...
No, he does go to war to satisfy Israel because that's what Miriam Edelson said to Donald Trump. Miriam Edelson said, you go to war, I give you $200 million. Initially, she paid him $100 million to elect him. Once he was in the office, Donald Trump, then she paid him another $100 million just to go to war with Iran. Alan Dershowitz, I don't know where he gets his facts, or he doesn't have any fact. He has just a bunch of lies, but that is not true. Donald Trump doesn't have anything on his own when it comes to foreign policy to make decision on. It is always Benjamin Netanyahu. How many times Benjamin Netanyahu visited Donald Trump in just a matter of few months? 6, 7 times. Who does that? Show me one president or prime minister from a different country who visits Donald Trump as often, as frequently as Benjamin Netanyahu. So, yeah, he does control Donald Trump, his foreign policy in the Middle East. Alan Dershowitz, come on, stop with all your lies. We are not a bunch of fools and morons.
interests of the United States. Of course, it's part of Netanyahu's job to persuade President Trump that it's in Israel's interest and the United States' interest to try to decapitate and to destroy Iran. They are an existential.
No, absolutely not. Iran's decapitation of leadership doesn't help United States at all. And we have seen this after this war started. When they killed Ali Khamenei, Iranian people got united more than ever before. There is nothing called decapitation of Iranian leadership. These are all propaganda. These are all lies that were fed to Donald Trump by Benjamin Netanyahu. And now Alan Dershowitz is trying to feed that same lie to us, thinking that we will take it.
Potential threat to America's interests and to America's allies. There was miscalculation. They are stronger and more determined than anybody thought. And the Gulf of Hormuz, by the way, the answer to the Gulf of Hormuz is that there have to be ways of circumventing the Gulf of Hormuz and of having an oil supply. We cannot end this war allowing Iran to maintain control over what is now an important waterway. It should cease to be an important waterway, which is why I have urged right from the beginning that the United States must control the straits and say to Iran, look, either everybody goes through or no one goes through. That was the message I sent in my op-ed. That's what I told people in the White House.
Okay, so as a Jewish, as a Zionist, why would you do that? You just said that Donald Trump makes his own war decision, right? Now you are proving yourself wrong by telling us that you have advocated, you have influenced Donald Trump in order to take complete control of Strait of Hormuz. This guy is so pathetic. He lies through his teeth. Again, moronic 100%.
Different motives would say.
Alan, it actually depends if people are actually pulling strings. And I do think Netanyahu's been doing that. Let me bring in Joe Kent. I mean, Joe Kent, this is one of the more unsavory. Well, I'll use the term I feel is appropriate. Joe Kent, I mean, this idea that
I'll criticize you for it.
Terms,
and I'll criticize you for it. You can say what you want, and I can say what I want. That's what the open marketplace of ideas is all about.
100%. We are, and especially on a show like Uncensored. Okay. You're entitled to your opinion.
We agree to disagree.
About the use of a phrase. Okay. I'm entitled to it too. Yeah, Joe Kent.
That's right.
You know, I do believe that there's been enormous pressure, Joe Kent, from Benjamin Netanyahu to literally try and dictate what America would do. And I think he did it. He tried to do it with Obama. He tried to do it with Joe Biden, and he failed. We know that from Anthony Blinken, who told us that he tried. And both times the American president said, I'm not coming with you if you attack Iran. And Israel did not attack Iran in either eventuality. So we know that here he found a president that would go along with it. And it's turned into, I think, a bit of a disaster here. What is your reading of that?
Yeah, I would more accurately describe it as a echo chamber that was created around President Trump. So what the Israelis do a very effective job of is they do punch way above their weight class. The Israelis, and this is on us, this is on the U.S. government's, this is our fault, we give them more access than they should have, than any foreign country should have. So what I witnessed over the last year was official engagements from members of Benjamin Netanyahu's government, the Israeli government, come and have official engagements with members of our government and say things like Iran can't have any enrichment. The policy has to be zero enrichment, when in fact President Trump had just said the policy was no nuclear weapon. And you'll see President Trump echo that in his talking points now. And the former Supreme Leader, before we killed him, agreed with that. And that got both President Trump and the Supreme Leader to the negotiating table. And so for almost a year, we saw constructive negotiations between us and the Iranian government. This was a direct threat to the Israelis. The Israelis told us this much. The Mossad director, David Barnea, specifically said that their goal was regime change in Iran. They weren't very shy about that whatsoever. And so they used their access through official channels to circumvent the intelligence community, because anytime that the Israelis said the Iranians are 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon, they're making a nuclear weapon, the U.S. intelligence community, we would go and we would do our due diligence. We would check that, and we would find that the Iranian internal prohibition on developing a nuclear weapon was still holding. As a matter of fact, the Iranians were also withholding their proxies from attacking us as well. That's what the U.S. intelligence community agreed on. DNI Gabbard testified to that publicly twice in front of Congress. The Israelis, though, used their influence to circumvent the intelligence channels, and then they also had their surrogates within the media come and echo to President Trump via Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, and say, hey, the red line is zero enrichment. And they said it enough, they made it repetitive enough through multiple avenues that President Trump was led to believe that his red line has to be zero enrichment. To take the issue off the table, we conducted Midnight Hammer. We totally obliterated their ability to enhance and and enrich uranium. But then the Israelis came right back and said, hey, no, there's still more uranium there. You have to go in and physically get it. You have to control it, because the goal for the Israelis at that point was still regime change. And so they used their outsized influence on our government to drive this war. And when they thought they weren't going to get the war, they then said, we're going to go in, we're going to conduct attacks against the Iranians. We're going to target their supreme leader, which we knew from studying the intelligence and Iranian doctrine over the last several decades would result in the Iranians then attacking our bases in the region. So Marco Rubio was 100% accurate when he said there was no imminent attack against us being planned by the Iranians. The only thing that was imminent was the Israelis conducting that attack. That drove us into this conflict. And that should make every American take pause and think, what is our relationship with this country of Israel? Why are we letting them drive us into yet another war in the Middle East? How vital is it that we have control over the Straits of Hormuz?
Okay, so Alan Dershowitz, you liar, you need to just shut up and F off. I agree. You just said that Donald Trump makes his own decision. Israel doesn't influence his decision whatsoever. You just said it a few seconds ago. And now that Jochen is exposing your lies.
For the first time ever,
telling
you can
us
make your
that it is not the case. It is actually quite the opposite, where Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Mossad, and their intelligence is influencing Trump's decision. Now you're saying, I agree with that. Unbelievable. This guy is just a moron and looks very, very pathetic. This old man must stop lying. Subscribe for more videos, guys.